Keep in touch with the Wolf Connection Podcast on our Instagram handle at the Wolf Connection Pod, or email us your questions, comments, and guest ideas to podcast@wolfconnection.org. Thank you for your support, and howls to you all. Welcome to the Wolf Connection Podcast. I'm your host, John Kalfa. Forrest Galante, it's been, 3 years, my man, since you've been on the podcast? Boy,
oh yeah,
long time.
Since the early days of the show, I believe.
Yeah, seriously. You were like one of the first 25.
Yep,
and when I look back at that, I was like, how did we get you, first of all?
Why not?
It's just crazy, though. Well, because, you do a lot of things. You're traveling the world. You're TV shows and YouTube, and we just got done filming outside in the somewhat heat, and you somewhat, gets a little hot out here. But I mean, what I always like to ask you, like, what keeps you coming back here? It's just like, it seems you have this like really great grounded connection to what we do and what we are. What is it with you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think, I like predators. I've always liked predators. My specialty is in reptiles more than anything, but some of my favorite trips I've ever done are darting lions and, catching big crocs and stuff like that. And this is the only place that I'm aware of in Southern California that primarily focuses on predators and being wolves. And I don't know, you guys are right down the road from me. It's only 2 hours away. And I love some of the animals here. I mean, I don't know. I just like this place. It's awesome.
Totally. It's always good to have you out here too.
What's been your experience with wild wolves? Have you had any trips? I know you go all over the world. I mean,
yeah, I haven't done, I have friends who've done like translocations and darting and stuff like that. I haven't done too much of that. I've done some trapping of wolves.
Really?
A little bit. And, not like, for your audience in particular, I should clarify, not like fur trapping or anything like that, like trying to get genetics and camera trapping and stuff like that. But yeah, I've seen wolves in the wild a handful of times in Alaska, Canada, North America. It's not something I'm a specialist at, but yeah, I've certainly had a little bit of experience with wild wolves.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, because we were just filming and we're doing these things, and what is it about them? And well, obviously, I think we'll just jump right in because there's so much going on right now with wolves. I mean, there always is, right? It doesn't always seem like there's always a million things happening with wolves, whether it's legislation or there's some form of poaching that's happening. And
there's always something.
There's always something going on, and I'm sure you saw what happened in Daniel, Wyoming, and with that wolf pup.
We talked about it on my podcast. It's horrendous.
It's horrendous. Yeah. And it's just from your perspective, again, because you have such a wide purview of where you go in the world.
Yeah.
And what is it specifically from your perspective about wolves that there is such this divisiveness? Because it doesn't seem to happen really for many other species, if at all. There's not this, right, left, blue, red, whatever it is. Wolves, there's very rarely a down the middle approach.
I think when we look at predators across the globe, wolves are the only one that have consistently lived throughout Western history, right? Not global history. Like, there's crocodiles all over the world, but not where Western people live, right? And if you think about like what we know as Westerners, as Americans, all of our stories come from the Americas or basically the Western world, right? The United Kingdom, Scandinavia, so on and so forth, where wolves are the alpha predators for the most part. Mm-hmm. And so for the entirety of our lineage's human history, it's been man versus wolf, right? Because wolf is the big bad predator throughout Scandinavia, throughout the United Kingdom, throughout North America. And so they have become vilified through Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf and the Three Pigs, and every children's story, everything creates an enemy out of wolves against human beings, and that is, in my opinion, the root of this whole evil wolf thing. It's come from many, many generations of human history of the big bad wolf and the sneaky wolf that's going to get you in the night and pull you out of your tent and blah blah blah. When we know very clearly through literally every account that there's been six counts of wolf-caused human death in human history or something like that.
100 and some odd years.
Something
it's
like
crazy.
that. Yeah, it's 6. That's it. You're way more likely to die on the 405 driving here than you are. I could sit with a meat skirt out in the wilderness trying to get a wolf to kill me, and it couldn't. My opinion is that's what's created the stigma of evil wolves. And then you grow up, especially in America and today, and I don't want to turn this into a political thing, and I'm not very political, but, everything's very divisive. It's left or right, it's blue or red. so on and so forth. And you sort of you don't have the choice to be neutral. Like you have to fall on one side of the coin or the other. You're either a tree-hugging hippie who loves them, or you're a toothless redneck who wants to murder them, right? And there's like nowhere in between. And you have to identify with one group or another in order to be socially accepted by your peers. So I think it's just a result of where we live now.
Yeah. So as a creator, I'm sure you do come across things that, you're certainly getting firsthand experience with all sorts of species, particular species that maybe there's worldwide misunderstandings about. As a creator, from your creative brain, what's like the first thing you think to do when you come across that kind of misinformation and you think, I got to correct this somehow?
Well, I think
my talents.
It's funny. I have a friend, this girl, Cass, who lives out in Florida, and we were just having this discussion because she's a shark biologist. She's a shark researcher, and she likes to like jump on people. If she hears this, she's going to kill me. But like, she likes to jump on people and be like, that's not how you should treat sharks. And it's like, well, that's, in my opinion, the wrong way to approach it, right? And if she hears it, she's going to be all mad that I said that because she's not really that difficult. So I won't be sending this to her. But like, we were just discussing this when I was on a shoot in Florida last week, and it's the same thing with sharks. The reason I bring this up, it's the same thing with wolves. It's the same thing with crocodiles. It doesn't matter what the predator is. If you across from me, Steven, go, wolves are bad, and I go, no, you're wrong, you idiot. Wolves are great.
Yeah.
We're never going to meet in the middle. We're never going to see eye to eye. I'm never going to change your mind. But if you go, wolves are bad, and I'm like, yeah, they are bad. In fact, they're fucking badass. And let me explain why, right? And you turn that into an open dialogue, and you start to explain, like, you're absolutely right, but here's something you didn't know. And you don't do it in a way like that where you sound like an arrogant prick. But, you do it in a way where you're like, but did you also know this? And did you also know that? And did you know that only 6 people have been killed in the last 100 years? And you do it in an open discussion forum. My opinion, anyway, as a creator and just a science communicator, is don't come out of there thinking you've changed their mind. Just come out of there having given the person that has a different viewpoint to yours a little bit more information. Right. And that way they can come to their own conclusion. And the next time you see them, bring it up again. Give them a little bit more information, and just allow people to open their minds to it as opposed to tell them what they believe is wrong.
Yeah, and agree it, there's so many different kinds of people out there with different lifestyles and different histories, and you can't blame anyone kind of for where they're at.
Dude, if I'm a sheep farmer, wolves are assholes. Right?
Yeah.
Like, wolves are assholes. Like, they eat my sheep. But hey, let's talk about this. Who was there first? Like, how many sheep do you have? How many wolves are there? Does it really matter? Like, how much is your actual financial damage if you consider it? Like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I guess wolves aren't, they've killed 4 sheep. I guess they're not that big out. You know what I mean? It's like, just meet some commonality as opposed to like telling people they're wrong.
Yeah. Thinking of it, actually, there are other, wolves are certainly on a different level of disdain most of the time, but there are, sharks, elephants, in Africa, or, I'm sure you've come across other species at least that are in seemingly inconsistent conflict with.
Oh, everything. I don't think there's anything I can't think of a single species in today's world that isn't in conflict with human beings. I think one of the biggest problems too, when it comes to wolves in specific, is what you see is like, take a state like Colorado, for instance, right? Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, they voted in for reintroduction of wolves, right? Guess who voted in the reintroduction of wolves? People living in the city of Denver, who will never see a wolf, right? The people who didn't vote in the reintroduction of wolves or voted against it are the people that live out in the country that will have to deal with wolves. And I think both sides, well, certainly the side of the farmers and ranchers that live out in the country, they know that it was voted in by people that have no connection to it. And so they hate that even more, so they become more adamantly opposed to it.
Yeah.
And it just speaks to that divide. It's like there is no relationship for the most part between the people that are making the decisions and the people that are actually interacting with the ecosystems and the animals. And that's the issue overall, like on a whole, in my opinion. If you could get all of those city people in Denver to go out into the wilderness and experience what wolves are like in the wild. By the way, also, if you could get all those ranchers and get them to actually experience what wolves are like in the wild, not in a ranch setting, but in the wild, you could reach common ground. You could reach neutrality across the board, but you don't get that. We're stuck in our ways over here. We're against the people that are over there, whatever they vote for, and so it just becomes a political situation as opposed to actually caring about the conservation.
Yeah, it's actually pretty basic human nature. It seems complicated, but
yeah. And it's funny how this all connects, right? And when the horrible thing that happened in Daniel with that wolf, really brought to light not only just the plight of wolves, but the wildlife in general, the predators in that state in general, right? Because we're talking about, it's not just wolves that get run over by snowmobiles, but it's not just, and when you read it and you go, oh, skunks and raccoons and jackrabbits and coyotes, and you go, this is a large swath of the biodiversity plane that's in this one specific state in Wyoming, that it's being taken out on the regular. And so when that happens, just how nothing stays in the way it should.
Yeah,
everything's out of balance. It's totally imbalanced. Yeah. And I think that's what some conservationists and some groups are now starting to realize, is that we're not framing this just as a wolf issue or a coyote issue. It's a wildlife biodiversity issue.
I think, I don't know if you're familiar with the organization Rewild.
Yes.
They used to be GFW, I don't know, Global Wildlife something. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But they're Rewild now. You're obviously familiar with them. They're the first organization, and I'm certain they have their own flaws as well, but they're the first like large scale organization that I've seen that is like trying to shift the narrative of like, I'm a specialist in this and I'm a specialist to this, to like, okay, how about the whole picture? And it's nice to see that shift is finally happening, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think other than invasive species, which of course some of that is subjective as well, and some people will say certain of these predators are invasive species, and we've heard that plenty of times. But other than genuine invasive species, none of these species are expendable anymore. Like we're kind of in an emergency.
No, nothing's expendable.
If nothing's expendable.
Absolutely not.
Just get rid of stuff.
I mean, and half the reason that half of the things are in peril are because of species that we've put in the wrong place.
Yeah.
The invasive species, which need to go. I mean, they really do. It's it's crazy. I mean, things are a mess, but I don't believe in pushing like the doom and gloom narrative.
No, yeah.
Like that's sort of against what I do in media and what my team and I stand for, which is the opposite, which is like, the world is a very beautiful place. There are still incredible wild spaces. There are still populations, albeit small, of amazing, healthy predators, prey, you name it. And I think pushing that narrative is way more important, because the doom and gloom's a page turner.
Yeah.
You look at it, it's like, oh, another animal's gone extinct, another beautiful primary forest being chopped down for a mall. Like, it's just a page turner. It doesn't even register anymore, because that's all we see in the media is doom and gloom.
Yeah, and that's the problem with that, is like you try to find the positives out of it. And I think that's where, or not even the positives, just saying, hey, there's a way forward in a lot of these doom and gloom scenarios, or a lot of these scenarios. I mean, from your perspective, again, as you go around the globe, how much of a dire situation, if anybody was to look at you and say, Forrest, you've been all over the globe, where do we actually sit in terms of biodiversity crisis and wild places shrinking to a point where we're at in 2024?
I think we've reached critical mass, or critical, we've blown through it, but it takes a long time for us to catch up to the realization of it. So let me explain. How can I explain that better? We're in big jeopardy, and you can look at basically any impoverished island nation to get a good example of that. Madagascar is a perfect example. Madagascar is one of the most incredible places in the entire world. Like, the amount of biodiversity, the amount of endemic species, unbelievable. Fucked. Like, if you could look it up there. I don't know what I think less than 8% of the country is still wild area or something like that, right? But yet, if with your head in the sand as a Westerner, as a tourist, whatever, you're like, Madagascar, let's go there and see chameleons.
Right.
You don't understand, there's only 8% of that entire gigantic island that's still wild. And of that 8%, it's not protected, it's not patrolled, it's just people just go in and shoot stuff when they can. And it doesn't mean it's not an incredible nation, but it's the Easter Island syndrome. You guys know Easter Island, the imploded its population by cutting down all the trees and losing all its resources. We'll do that to the planet. We will. And we're on our way to doing that, but everybody's just focused on their own little thing, or everything's fine. There's a few bushes over there that look healthy, but this area is no good. It's like everybody's just focused on their own little thing. The big picture is a mess.
Well, and I'm glad you explained it that way, because I think I agree with you in that we see things from the perspective we want to see them in, obviously, right? And we look at it, and I think that's what I think from our perspective, at least because we're in the wolf world, and we're in the wolf dog world, and we see and I've said this to multiple, but the Carter Niemeyers, the Doug Smiths, the people that have lived this for decades, especially in this specific scenario, is that if we could theoretically, and I mean, when I say solve the wolf problem, I don't mean like eradicate the wolf. I'm talking about we solve this disconnect, this vitriol, this hate, this management, all of these. If you solve that problem, that to me is the domino effect that could basically take that, like could be the crux that will help the rest of these wildlife problems, because it's so divisive. There's so much anger. There's so much whatever it is on either side, that if those two sides can come together, or like if there's a shark thing that comes together, if you help one of these big apex megafauna predators, I mean, you could just be like, all right, well, how do we do it for the wolf? How can we do it with these, sections of trees, these types of lands? Do you agree that it would take something of that caliber? It doesn't have to be wolf, but something like that to get people in the right mindset to be able to do things.
The problem with wildlife conservation management is every single species and situation is different. Because the people who are going to have conflict with wolves are very different from the people that are going to have conflict with sharks. That being said, you have to have a blueprint for how to marry those. And I think that's the hardest thing that people don't seem to understand about wildlife conservation. There is no blanket resolution to anything in conservation. Like, you have to manage every single situation as its own independent thing, and that's why it's so disjointed and disconnected. But I absolutely agree. If there were a blueprint for how to resolve the human-wildlife conflict mitigation in a non-lethal format, in a non-lethal way for wolves, then that could create a blueprint for how to manage large predator species in a modern world, which we don't have. Because the reality is, throughout human history, anytime there's been conflict with a predator, you put a bullet in its head, or an arrow, or a spear, or a fucking blunt stone thing. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. You kill it and move on. We can't afford to do that anymore. Like, there's not enough predators, there's not enough animals to just put a bullet in its head anytime there's conflict any longer.
Yeah. When you say there's not enough predators, what do you mean? From a
globally.
Yeah.
Globally, there are not enough predators any longer. Now, you can look into small ecosystems and be like, oh, it's great. There's plenty of wolves in Yellowstone. Fine. There's not enough wolves in North America. Do you know what I mean? Like, the two are not, like, there are absolutely plenty of wolves in Yellowstone. There are not enough wolves in North America to manage things like, you were mentioning the elk. I didn't realize we're unregulated in Wyoming. The deer in Minnesota, I think it's Minnesota, where there's just like way too many white-tailed deer. The list goes on and on. Like, there's not enough predators in the system. That's why coyotes have taken over. And, you can go into a whole tangent on that. But like, it's just like there's not enough predators so that every time there's a conflict, you kill it any longer.
Yeah. I mean, what do you see as the way forward? Like, if you were to give, you've given your opinion, and again, you have this expertise because you travel the world and you do all these wonderful things with your channel. What would to you would be the logical next step, or the first step towards something like that? Is it information for the public? Is it a town hall forum? What do you think is the way that in the society we're in currently would work? Because we can always go back to the drawing board and say, oh, this worked 30 years ago. It's not going to work now.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think connection is the main thing. I think if you brought in every single person that despised wolves in this country through Wolf Connection and had them walk through the creek with Willow, that would change 50% of the minds. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying you guys can do that. I'm not saying that's ever going to happen. But I think connection is the thing that's missing. It's very easy to vilify the big bad wolf from the seat of your tractor or sitting in your living room with the air conditioning on. It's different once you've looked into one's eyes and you've gone for a walk down the creek with it and you've spent some time with it and you go, oh, wait a minute, it's not a mindless killing machine that's just out there to murder my livestock. And I think connection is the issue, and most people are disconnected.
Yeah. I mean, going forward, and there's a bunch of other incredible conservation things that are coming out. I mean, are there any places that you see that are trying to move the conversation forward at a faster rate? I know we were talking about, Colossal a little bit and some of the things they're doing, but they're involved in wolf conservation too, in terms of, red wolves and possibly Mexican grays, because those are, and when we talk about dire situations, there's really no more dire in the wolf world than reds and red wolves and Mexican grays. I mean, what are things like an organization like that looking to do to try and
It's a good question.
Move those things forward.
Well, obviously, you could take all this with a grain of salt because I'm a conservation advisor to Colossal, so I'm very pro that company. I believe in them wholeheartedly. And they are looking at the fact that we are in such a critical state that we have to preserve genetic diversity as much as possible, to the fact that they're biobanking stuff so that they can clone it in the future if we lose it completely. I mean, if that doesn't yell crisis, I don't know what does. And I support that notion, but much larger than that notion is the fact that they are, as a large biotech company that believes in conservation, they are supporting, as you said, Mexican gray wolf, red wolf, so on and so forth. And they're doing that through a variety of ways. One is bringing on partners, partner and trying to unify partners. Like we came out here with Matt James, the head of animal science, good buddy of mine, and, met with you guys and met with Tio and said, like, how do we bring you into the fold so that we can connect you with all the other wolf conservation groups and we can all have an aligned message? And I think that creating community like that is really, really smart, because I have had the fortune/misfortune of going to so many biological conferences where everybody's fucking snickering and bickering about each other. And yeah, you bring all these people together in a room, but they're not aligned. Even though their goals are aligned, they're not aligned as organizations. And I think that's one of the things that Colossal is doing right now, that it's not even, I'm not even giving you a direct answer, but just bringing all these same people into the same room and saying, hey, how do we all work together? Like, we have a lot of resources. We're a big company. How do we all work together to accomplish something is so much smarter than you're a wolf organization, you're a wolf organization, you're a wolf organization. Oh, you don't like her because she wants work there and he hates him, and like all the politics of it. And yeah, we all care about wolf conservation, but we're all fighting for the same tiny little pot of money, so we don't actually like each other, which is how conservation really works, is aligning all of those groups and be like, hey, how do we spread the wealth? Like, how do we spread the message? I think that's really going to be a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just when we're trying to balance this stuff, I mean, what is it, just a couple more things, I think, because we've hit so much. I mean, I want to know for you, I asked like why you come back to Wolf Connection. You've been here so many times. What are things that you take with you when you experience the wolves, experience the people, you see the work that happens here? Like, what are some of the things that you take with you, you put in your pocket and you go and, you head to Thailand or you head to, Japan? Like, what's something that resonates with you, that holds, with yourself?
It's a good question. I love the way that you guys here let the wolves make the decisions, right? And you have to do that. You don't have a choice, right? You can't really force a wolf to do anything, but you embrace that wholeheartedly here at Wolf Connection. And we are human beings, and myself very much so, ask my wife, are controlling creatures, right? You know what I mean? Like, we want to control everything. We want to control a dog. We want to control a cat. We want to control a wolf, whatever. We want to control our lives. And taking a breath and letting the animals have the safety net of allowing them to make their own decisions, especially here because it's a captive facility, right? And at the end of the day, like there's a lot of controversy around captive animals for that very reason, because people feel like you're controlling them. But the animals here make their own choices. Like, you could, whether they want to go in a crate or not go in a crate, or go on a walk or not go on a walk, or interact with a random person. I like that. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons I keep coming back here, is like the animals get to choose. Like, half these animals don't want to see me today. 2 or 3 of them came running up and they recognized me. And I was like, hey, buddy, that's fine. I'm perfectly happy with that. I like that approach. And I have a very cool trip coming up. I'm going to Churchill Safaris in Manitoba.
Oh, we want to go there.
Yeah, so I'm going in September to work with that wolf pack that is allegedly the only wolf pack in North America, I'm probably going to butcher this and get called out, that has never had like negative human interaction. So they're relatively fearless. Like, they'll sit right in front of you. They'll go in and out of their dens. They'll play with their pups, everything, because they've never been prosecuted by humans, like ever in human history. So they're like a group of wolves that allegedly just acts like wolves would act if they weren't ridiculed by humans for generations. And so I'm really excited to see that.
My goodness. Yeah. That's Jad Davenport's place.
Yeah,
that is such, he's you're going to love spending time with that guy. He's incredible. He's such a great dude. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That we've been thinking about how do we get on one of those, but what's your plan for the trip? Are you going to
Polar bears and wolves?
Yeah.
We're flying in. We're filming it. We're going to do the walking with polar bears and wolves, try and track some wolves at their dens. They do like a big safari vehicle type thing. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do the on foot stuff. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No,
God,
it's
be
so
awesome.
great. There's just so many places to go. that we've, Steve and I, they're like, oh, come out here. I was like, we got to get the funding for that.
Yeah.
It's so crazy to do those things. But I mean, so that's your next adventure. I would say if you could leave a piece of advice for anybody who's watching this, listening to this, and obviously they thought, we hope, our followers, listen to everybody like cross promotes and sees what we're doing here in this collaboration that we have, a piece of wisdom or advice for not only wolves, but just for the planet and the biodiversity as a whole going forward. What would you say to somebody who says, if I was to try and make change, or I was to try and enact any sort of legislation, or what's my first, dip my toe in the stream? What is it?
I think most people feel helpless, like there's nothing I can do that's going to contribute. And the takeaway for me is it's not one person doing conservation perfectly that's going to make a big difference. It's everybody doing it imperfectly that's going to add up to a big change. So that can be as simple as following a good account on Instagram that's educational around conservation. That can be not getting a plastic bag at the grocery store, or making sure you take 5 extra seconds to organize your recycling. You don't have to travel to Africa and dart lions to make an impact in conservation. And that's the problem, is people think that you do. You don't. It's little tiny choices that won't negatively impact your life that will add up to a big change. And so that, to me, that's all it is. Like, don't be like, I'm going to drop everything and, move to the Sahara Desert and try and save a bat-eared fox. Like, don't do that. You're not going to have a good time. You're going to be home in 3 months. Like, just make small choices to educate yourself, to learn more, to be exposed more to conservation, and you will fall into a groove of things that you can do that are going to make a big impact by adding up.
Yeah, no downside.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I think that's a great point, is people, I think you're right. They want to do the exponentially great, wonderful, it's going to take up the rest of my life to do. And it starts small.
Yes.
And it's, you put literally one paw in front of the other, as we say that stuff here. And you see that stuff so beautifully.
Yeah.
And it just, like you say, coming from someone like yourself, who's in the world all the time, who can see, again, traveling the globe and seeing all these things, it coming from a place of like, hey, like, we got to get our stuff together.
That's it. That's all it is.
And really figure that out.
And it just make little changes. The other thing is, I've harped on this like 4 times now, just be connected. Don't sit down and watch fucking Netflix. Go take a walk in a wild area. Just do both. Like, Netflix, great. I'm going to go home and watch Netflix tonight, guaranteed. But I also spent my day out in the creek by the with the wolves. You know what I mean? Like, just put a little time in to get connected to nature, because once you connect with something, you fall in love with it. Once you fall in love with it, you want to save it.
Yeah, and you'll make different decisions once you're connected to something. Yeah.
Exactly.
So where are you headed next? What's your next thing?
No, that's like 3 things away. I wish
wow.
that was it.
Yeah.
I got to go to Florida next week to do some more shark stuff. And then after that, we've got Vanuatu to do some diving and tribal stuff. And then megapode birds there, which are the volcano birds that lay their eggs in the volcanoes. And then we've got the Canada thing. And then I've got Colombia, which is the Zoom I got to get on in 10 minutes. It's never ending, man. One of these days I'll sleep.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. But again, you always know that you have a spot here to come up and just sit with the wolves and have a Zen moment, so you can sit in the creek and relax. So
thank you so much.
You know that's always here.
And the last time I came, I told my son this morning when I was pulling out that I was coming here and I was leaving, and he was like, "What, Dad? I have to go with you." I was like, "You're going to school, pal." But yeah, no, it made a big connection for my son when he came out a few months ago when we were with Matt, which was just a byproduct of us going by here as a family. But it's a great place. There's a lot of Zen that comes out of being here.
Just a minute. We'll have to have a whole nother podcast on what it's like to be Forrest Galante. So.
I know. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sure. Oh my God. I asked you this the first time 3 years ago, and maybe it's changed, but I'll ask it again. When you hear the word wolf, what's the thing that comes to your mind?
Good question. I'm curious what I said 3 years ago. When I hear the word wolf, the first thing that comes to my mind is the word regal. Like, it stands alone. It's its own species. They have, like, I get goosebumps thinking about the word wolf, because they stand alone in my mind when it comes to social dynamic, intelligence, ability, they're just sort of on another level. A mountain lion's great. Like, I don't really, whatever. It's a cat that hides in the shadows. A wolf is like this big regal presence to me. So they sort of stand alone as the alpha organism of the North Americas.
Incredible. Forrest Galante, man. Thank you so much for doing this. We got your face on camera now. It's so great. And listen, thanks for all you do. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for helping us with our place and having a good time. That's really what it's about.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Love all the work you do here.
Yeah, same to you, man. How's to everybody out there? We'll see you next time. Looking for more information about Wolf Connection or the podcast? Please visit our website at wolfconnection.org, where you can donate, sponsor a wolf, or become a volunteer.